in be so interested about my book, but I want to excuse again all the mistakes that I'm going to do in English. Sorry, it's not my first language. And the second excuse is that I see a few people here that heard me yesterday, and I'm afraid that they will be boring to hear it again. I will try to change a lot of things, okay? That the people that were yesterday will not be too much tired with my explanation, description of the Jewish non-people. Now, as Bertel told you, I'm teaching history in the Tel Aviv University. Jewish history is not my field. It's a long time that I was working about the natives in France, for example, and also natives in Germany. In one day I decided to question the natives in Israel, I mean the Jewish in Israel. And this is the book, this is a product of my my questioning the Jewish present in the history. Now, I wrote the book after I got the full professorship, because I was sure that if I will write it before it, there were not any chance to become a full professor. Not only in Tel Aviv, I believe also in NYU it wasn't sure that I could be. It's not a joke. Now, I wrote the book after I understood that nobody can touch me really in academic point of view. Now, it wasn't my field. Then at the beginning, I didn't know exactly what I'm going to do. There were a few questions, a few things that bothered me a lot as a historian of other fields. I have to explain you that I'm not a historian of the Jewish people, because we have in the Tel Aviv University a special department of Jewish history. I belong to the department of general history that is occupying with all the goys, but not about the Jewish. I have not any right to direct somebody in thesis, to write scientific articles or book about Jewishness. Why? Because I don't belong to the department of Jewish history. By the way, the Department of Jewish History, a little department with 12 students, I think, this year. We have 120. This department, all of the professors there are Zionist professors. It's very natural. By the way, it's all the universities in Israel has two departments separately, completely separate. Okay? Then it's not my subject, it's not my field, it's not my right to write about Jewish history. I decided to write it because, you see, I thought that Jewish history is something very, very interesting. Very interesting. In the way people write about it, I didn't like. But I don't hide that I decided to write this book also because I am Israeli citizens that living in Israel in the beginning of the 2000 years, in seeing around me a kind of, how we call it, images of the past. And I'm speaking now like as a citizen, images of the past that worried me a lot. For example, to explain it clearly, I believe that you know, more or less, at least a part of you, that you are not a direct descendant of the Anglo-Saxon. You know it? In France, for example, people know today, the beginning of 2000 year, that they are not direct descendants of the Gauls. You see? But 100 years ago, most of the Americans believed that they are the direct descendant of the Anglo-Saxon that came here, you know, long time ago. Now, this is very interesting, between Israelis, 95% or even more are sure that they are the direct descendant of the people of the Bible. But it's not only the Israelis. I think that the Jew, most of the Jew in the world, at least in the Western world, are sure also that they are the direct descendant of the old Hebrew. even in this room, I believe, there are people that more or less think that they are, you know, the children, not of God, but of the Bible, no? I started to write a book because I have questions around the concept like what is a people, what is a nation, what is nationalism, what is a nation state, and other things. By the way, the first chapter I'm dealing with this concept. Then if somebody is starting to read the book, you can jump on this chapter. It's the most abstract, most difficult. And I didn't succeed in this chapter really to be simple as the rest of the book. Okay? Don't be afraid. This chapter is difficult. Jump on it, and then it becomes much more narrative. You see, it will take you forward. Now, starting with a simple thing, with a concept like people. Yes? It's not a scientific term. But what we mean usually when we say American people. Most of you belong to the American people? Yes, no? No, you come from Israel. No.
New York is my country.
Okay. No, it's you know, it's very interesting. The people started to decompose in some way in the beginning of the new millennium. But you know, using the word American people, French people, Italian people. See? It's useful. What we are meaning by saying Italian people? We are speaking about a group of human beings that are speaking the same language, more or less, has the same way of life, more or less, are eating the same food, more or less, have the same music, more or less, etc., etc., etc. Practice a norm, culturally practice a norm, common to this society that we call Italian people. If it's true to use Italian people, French people, German people, American people, how can I use the word Jewish people? You understand me? Because, you see, if I have a cat and a dog, I cannot start to call the cat dog. You agree with me? Yes. Because if I would call the cat dog and the dog dog, I didn't know who to call. No, it's not so simple. You have to understand. Jewish people, it means what? They don't have a language common to all. They are not speaking the same language. You see, I'm from Jewish origin. I imagine that there are other people here from Jewish origin, not? A lot of you. Can I speak in Hebrew now? You know, I'm very good in Hebrew, really. At least, can I speak in Yiddish? Not at no. Okay, I have to speak your language. Okay, English. It was an option once when I was young. You see, I believe that we can arrive to it. Why Jewish people? Not a language, not a food. We are not eating the same food. You see. By the way, in Israel we are eating hummus. You know what is hummus? I went in London to a restaurant, an Israeli restaurant, and I see hummus falafel, but it's not really Jewish. We steal it from the Palestinians like we stole the land. You know it. Now, not food, not language, maybe music. Yes, but the Doors music is not a Jewish music. I like the Doors, the Beatles. Unfortunately, it's not Jewish, okay? For the moment. Now, what will we mean, Jewish people? If it's not a secular culture common to the Jew, it's difficult to speak in modern terms about a people. Don't forget that before the modernity, the word people was applied to a lot of things, quite differently than they use today. All the Middle Ages, the word people was applied to religious group, like the Christian people. You heard about it? God's people in England. Very common to speak about God's people. The Englishmen were the God's people, you know? Peuple de Dieu for the French. I mean, the word people design religious group. In the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, people has other connotation. But not the modern connotation. You understand me? Then why Jewish people? There is other reason why to use the word Jewish people. This deep belief that the Jewish came from the same origin. They came from where? From Palestine, no? 2,000 years ago, the Romans expelled the Jewish from Palestine. And they started to wander in the world, create a diaspora, arriving to Moscow, making a U-turn, return to their land in Palestine, Israel. This is the kind of way that I studied history from the beginning till the last year. 10 years ago, I believed that the Jew, me, as a Jew, I'm a descendant of these people that were exiled 2,000 years ago. Everybody in Israel believed it, and I think also here, people more or less thinking that the Jews were exiled 2,000 years ago, no? And it has more or less, not a pure race, but more or less they are from the same, ethnos, okay? I started to write the book after thinking about concept from the beginning. I think that the Jewish have not exactly the same origin, and I didn't understand why I have to continue to use the word Jewish people. And I thought that Jewishness is a religion, first of all, a very important religion in the Western world. When I started to speak with my students about it, it wasn't so simple. But we are a Jewish people. How come? The first basic in the 19th century to create a Jewish people, the first basic was the Bible. I noticed that the first part of the 19th century, Jewish first historians in the modernity in the 19th century consider Jew as religious community. Only in the second round of the 19th century appeared the first historians to use Jewish people in a modern sense. It means the question when the Jewish people was invented, it's a long time ago, 140 years. It's a long time, no? 140 years that the Jewish people was invented. By the way, the French people, it was 200. The German people is 250. But it's not bad. 230, 240 years that the Jewish people exist as a concept. Now, in the modernity, to create nations, intellectuals invented to the past people. Understand? To invent a French nation, it was necessary, to create a French nation, it was necessary to invent a French people till the beginning of the time, till de Gaulle or till Clovis. For 100 years, little Frenchmen studied that they are the right descendant of the Gauls. Nos ancêtres les Gaulois was the first sentence in a lot of books, history books in the schools. Nos ancêtres les Gaulois, notre ancestor les Gaulois. Jews started to write the history of the Jew from the Bible. My first chapter, after the theoretical chapter, is dealing the way that these intellectuals of the national intellectuals of the second half of the 19th century took the Bible as a basic to tell the history of the Jew as a people. And it was a new thing to do. You have to know that the Bible, that is not a book, it's a library, was not read by Jew. Everybody believes that the Bible is the book of the Jews, no? More or less? The first testament, not the second one. But do you know the Jewish in their yeshivas, in their rabbinic schools, didn't study the Bible. They didn't read the Bible. Jewish didn't read the Bible. They have not the right to read the Bible. Who read the Bible before the modern times? It was a very, very important Jewish sect that the name was Karaite. You know what is Karaite? Karaite. I think that in English we're saying Karaite, no? Karaitis. Karaitis is a very important Jewish sect. I don't know if to call it Jewish sect, a monotheistic sect in Jerusalem, very, very strong. And they read the Bible as the first book of their identity. The second group that read the Bible before modernity was, where? Who? Huh? Protestant. They jumped on the Bible as the beginning of their religion, because they are the really children of Israel, you know, the Protestants. You know it. I believe that there are people here, really children of Israel, from Protestant origin, no? I don't see very clear, but I believe. I don't know how to define somebody that is a real Protestant. And even a Jew, I don't arrive to identify immediately. Now, the Protestants were the second group that read seriously the Bible, and the third one was the Zionists. In the second half of the 19th century, at least from the end of this century, Zionists started to read the book not as a theological book, but as a historical book. You see, all my education passed in Israel. When I was 7 years old, I studied the Bible in a secular school, not in a religious school. I studied the Bible as what? As a history. History of my people, the Jewish people. You can imagine it, from 7 years old till the degree of the high school in the end, in 18, everybody in Israel is studying every week. Before the English language, before mathematics, before history, it is the Bible. By the way, in last years, they decided to start it in the first class, to be sure that people will know that they belong to the Jewish people. A month ago, I read that they thinking to put the Bible in the kindergarten. They don't know to read, but we can read before them who they are. You understand? It's very important. Especially in this world that national identity, national culture started to be decomposed. Then it's much more sure to read the Bible to children in the kindergarten. It's not a joke, by the way. They didn't decide yet if to do it in the kindergarten or not, but it's very near to happen. Now, the Bible became the basic of the history of the Jew. In the 90s, more or less 20 years ago, Israeli archaeologist. This is a New York accent. I have an Israeli accent in English. Any archaeologist, okay? Israeli archaeologists, the good Zionists, started to discover that a lot of things in the Bible, most of the things in the Bible, are legend and has not a real historical basic. I will not come in too much, but because if I'm telling all the book, you will not buy it. By the way, you can wait to the paperback, no? Not to, okay. I'm used to buy always paperback. No, but I'm sorry that I said it. Anyway, Israeli diggers of the land of Israel discover that the exodus, the famous exodus of the Jew, exodus of the Jew, going out from Egypt, didn't happen. The exodus didn't happen. It's terrible, no? You know why it's terrible? Very difficult for everybody? There is Pesach. You know what is Pesach? In this holiday, very important Jewish holiday, you can imagine that exodus didn't exist. Why to make this holiday in Pesach? Now, not only the Exodus, by the way, there is a lot of reasons that were proved the Exodus couldn't be. In my book, I come into details, but you have to understand, the Exodus supposed to be the 13th cycle before Jesus Christ. Okay? 13. In that time, the Egyptian Empire exists also in Canaan. Then Moses took out the Jew from Egypt to bring back to Egypt. Because Canaan was Egypt. You understand the David and Solomon kingdom didn't exist. It was a little teeny kingdom around Jerusalem of David, maybe. But it's true that it wasn't a kingdom unifying Israel and Judah together, great one, like it's described in the Bible, that is telling in the Bible. Anyway, the Bible lost a lot of credibility because of our archaeology in Israel. I started the book trying to confront the all the new document about the Bible with the Zionism, the way that they constructed the Jewish national history. And I wanted to finish with it, to make a little book about it. And I remember the day that I started to become interested in another chapter, very important, of constructing the national consciousness or national memory of the Jew, and especially of the Israelis. It was the exile. I'm sure that a lot of people sitting here are sure the Jewish were exiled from Palestine after the revolt of 70, after the destruction of the Second Temple. No? Jews were exiled from this. Everybody knows it in Israel, in New York, especially in New York. No? Sorry?
What about Holocaust, the settler?
You know, some people say that the exile happened in 70. The others say that the exile started in 135 in the revolt of Bar Kokhba. Now, I started to dig a little bit the subject. And I discovered, to make it simple, because I see that there are people here that are interested about the subject and knows about the subject. The Romans didn't exile the Jewish from Judah. Now, you doubt about it. No, you think that the Jewish were exiled, no? Now, it's very interesting that I was looking for books, research books, that are speaking about the exile of the Jew. In the first century after Jesus Christ, I didn't find even one book. You can imagine it? One of the most important events in the Jewish history didn't happen. The Romans didn't expel Jew from Judah. How come? How come? Not in 70, not in 135. No, I don't ask you. I'm happy that you know something about it.
Because most Jews were dead.
Then most Jews were dead, but not exiled. Okay. Most Jews were dead, but not exiled. Then exile didn't happen. They died. Sorry.
Can you die in exile?
Sorry?
Can you die in exile?
Let's let him continue.
No. Then I repeat, no exile, even one book, is not speaking about the exile of the Jew from Judah. Now, in the population, in the collective memory, even on our money in the pocket, it's written that we were exiled. We, the Jews, were exiled from Judah. You know, we have the 50 shekels. It's not $50, it's $10, I think, no? More or less. Our $10, there is the description of Agnon saying that we were exiled from Jerusalem, from Judah, by the Roman, by Titus. in everybody in Israel is sure that we were exiled from Judah. In Rome, there is a gate that you see there, the menorah, the menorah, with people holding the menorah. When I was a child, in my textbook, it was written, in this gate in Rome, you see Jewish holding the menorah going out to the exile. 3 months ago, our Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, went to Rome to meet his friend Berlusconi, a good friend, by the way. After meeting Berlusconi and all the girlfriends and all this, he came to the gate. No, it's not a joke. He came to the gate. He took a photo with the gate like this, and it was written in the journals that he is standing near the gate that showed that the Jewish people were exiled from Israel, from the land. Now, one of the things that I didn't notice when I was a child, that the guys that holding the menorah don't have beards. And they have a very short robes. You know, like here, it was very, very fashion in the Roman soldiers. Very nice robes and without beard. The Jewish has a beard, even in that time. The Romans didn't have a beard. I am sure that Bibi Netanyahu in the photo didn't think about it. That the photo is about Roman soldiers taking the thing that they robbed from the temple and going it to Rome. Jewish were not expelled. A lot of them were killed. There is not numbers, but we know that most of the historians of the antiquity, exaggerate with numbers. I try to show it, I will not come into the problem. You can put away 1 0 in all numbers of the all the historians of the old time. 1 0. No, mister, not Shoah after the revolt. You know why? Because 65 years after the revolt of Bar Kokhba, Judah became the place, the basic of one of the achievements, the most important achievements of the Jewish tradition, of Jewish, ideologically, a Jewish religion. I'm speaking about the Mishnah. You heard about the Mishnah? A part of you, Mishnah. Before the Talmud, Mishnah, Mishnah, not Mishnah. The Mishnah. It was written 200 years. 65 years after the Bar Kokhba, one of the most achievements of Jewishness was produced in Judah. Okay? And there is a lot of material today to show that even if the revolt was very, very difficult of Bar Kokhba, this fanatical revolt of Bar Kokhba, very quickly, in one generation, the country became flourished even before. That if the Jews didn't exile, what happened? 2 questions were put before me. What happened with the population plus? What happened with the Jew? Because they were not exiled, first of all. And how come there are so many Jews in the world? You understand me? Now, what happened with the Jewish in Judah? In Palestine, because we have to say Palestine after the Bar Kokhba revolt. What happened with the Jewish in Palestine after the revolt? What happened with the Jewish during all these years? How come that the Jewish disappeared from Palestine? You have an idea? I have. I started to look, and I found in the writings of the first Zionists the answer. You don't know, I imagine, a lot about the first Zionists. For example, Israel Belkind. He's the first guy, before Herzl, that has a Zionist arrived to Palestine. Israel Belkind. You don't know the name. But you know David Ben-Gurion? No? The young don't know who is David Ben-Gurion? David Ben-Gurion. David Ben-Gurion. No, in New York it's David Ben-Gurion. No? You know him. David Ben-Gurion, with his friend Yitzhak Ben-Tzvi, wrote a book, a very important book about Palestine in 1919. By the way, it's very astonishing that they wrote it here in New York. They were exiled, by the way, by the Turk. And they wrote a fantastic book about Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. They are the first one that started to use in modernity the word Eretz Israel. Because all the Zionists call it Palestina, you know. In this book, they gave the answer that I was looking for. They knew, and they write, it's a mistake to think that the Jews were exiled. The Jews stay in place like all the peasants in the world. And the peasants in Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, are the direct descendant of the old Jew. If you don't believe me, buy the book. I quote Ben-Gurion, I quote Ben-Tzvi, I quote Belkin to show at least till 1929 the most important Zionists believe that the Arabs there, the natives, are the real descendants of the old Jew. Astonishing, no? Bizarre, say in French. You see, they try to make the picture of the Israeli people differently than later. They were a minority as settlers, and they wanted to recuperate the Palestinians as a part of the Jewish people. They spoke, and they write about the Arabs in Palestine as a part of their flesh and blood. I mean, they had a concept that we need a same origin to become a people, but they consider the Arabs in Palestine as a part of their flesh and blood. Till the first Arab revolt in 1929. Suddenly they discovered that the natives don't want to be Jew. There was a problem. By the way, I'm thinking that it's pity. Huh? If they accepted to be a Jew, it was differently now. Huh? We could have as Prime Minister Azmi Bishara, maybe, I don't know. Or Ismail Haniyeh, the Prime Minister of Israel, who knows? Anyway, when I tried to expose this idea before a lot of Arabs, Palestinians, they didn't like the idea that they are the descendant, direct descendant of the Jew. Especially the Hamasnik. Huh? It's not a joke, by the way. They didn't accept it so well. Anyway, I think that Ben-Gurion was right. It's one of the points that I accept his ideas. I mean, he exaggerated a little bit because he wasn't a serious historian. I don't think that the Palestinians are the direct descendant of the old Jew. You know why? Because every conqueror passed there in this area and left his seeds in the place. They are mixed like most of the peoples in the world. I try to convince them that they will not start with the mythology, national mythology, that they are the real Jew. It will make a lot of problems, you see, diplomatically. And it's fantastic. You can imagine to write a script about this? Yes. A family of Hamas discovered by the DNA, for example, that they are the old Jew. Now, the second question was, if the Jewish were not expelled. By the way, I think that the Palestinians are not the direct descendant of the old Hebrew, but I think that the chance that the Palestinian in Hebron will be a descendant of the old Jew, it's 1,000 times more than me. I mean, I think that the chance that he is a descendant of Palestinians is much more than most of us here. Jewish and not Jewish. Now, what happened? In the beginning of the 7th century, the Arabs arrived to Palestine. Jewish and Palestine exist till this time has a majority, more or less. A lot of them become Christian. but not all the population. It was a resistance, a very strong resistance to become Christian. You know why? Because a lot of people has a problem with the Son of God. You know, it's a kind of coupure. You know, Christianity and Jewishness are very far from the theological point of view. It was very difficult to admit that the grace was descendant to the land, to the earth. You understand me? It was very difficult for Jews to become Christians. But with the Islam, it was a happiness. This is the reason, for example, that I cannot support now, when I'm living in Paris a little bit, to hear notre civilisation judo-chrétien. You know, today everybody is speaking in Europe, we are Judo-Christians. You hear them? Very popular. I don't understand. No, it's a very nice formula, but I read that they didn't use it, the French one, in the 40s. It was nice, 1940, I mean, to become a Judeo-Christian before the Germans. Anyway, to say Judo-Islamic is much more logic, you understand? A prophet came from the desert and said that he is the continuation of the other prophet. He is not the son of the God. They opened the Jerusalem, the holy city of the Jewish, before the Jew. You understand? The first time that the Jew could come into the holy city was with the Islam conquest. Not only this. You see, the first step of the conquest of the Islam, every guy that was converted to Islam was free of taxes. You heard about it?
Was what?
Was free of taxes. Taxes.
Oh, free of tax.
He didn't have to pay taxes if he was converted to Islam. You can imagine it? They are coming. Tomorrow they will come to New York. They propose every person, every guy that was except to be converted to Islam will be free of taxes. How many New Yorkers will accept the Islam? Thinking 76. People become Islamic without knowing that they are changing religion. I'm speaking about peasant. In this way, they become, this peasant, after 1,000 years, the Palestinian, more or less. Now, what happened with the rest of the world? And this is important. Now, everybody of us, in Me Too, 8 years ago, I was sure that Judaism is a kind of closed religion. They don't try to proselyte other people. No? You don't try to proselyte other people? No. You are seeking the Judaism in opposition to the Islam or the Christianity is not a proselyte religion. It's not true. From 200 years before Jesus Christ, when the first time in my theory monotheism arrived to power in the Western world, I'm speaking about the Maccabean, one of the first things that this authority, new authority of the Maccabean after the revolt of Maccabean, one of the first things that they are doing is what? To convert by force all their neighbors. They were not the last monotheists that tried to convert by force, but they were the first one. And they convert a lot of people around them, and this is the reason that Horus became the king of Judah in the end. You know who is Horus? How we call it? Herodes. Herod. American guy. Herod. Okay. We call him Horus. Sorry that I changed the name. didn't know that he is living in New York. Anyway, the last Edomic king, it's a result of forced conversion that started in Judah 200 years before Jesus came, and it continued. Jewishness was the first monotheism that convert people. And they convert a lot of people in the Roman world. They succeeded to convert families, slaves, because every converted family forced the slaves to be converted. In Judaism started to spread in all the Mediterranean. But not only private families, not only slaves, kingdoms become converted. The first kingdom in the first century that were converted, it was in Babylon. Once I thought the Jewish of Iraq are the authentic Jew of Palestine, because the first exile. I was sure. I have a lot of respect to them because of it. And suddenly I discovered it was a kingdom that was converted in this area. It's called in Hebrew Hadayev. How you call it in English? Hadayev. Adbayan, I think. You don't know. You don't know Jewish history. A very good kingdom. By the way, in the revolt of 70, they sent people to fight with the Judean in Judah. It's the first kingdom, but not the last Jewish kingdom. In the 5th century, you know more or less where is Yemen? Yemen? It exists there a very strong Jewish kingdom that lasts more than a Maccabean kingdom. Nobody in Israel today don't know about this kingdom that lasts 150 years, more or less. You can imagine? We love history. We, the Jew, the Israelis. We don't know, we don't teach about the Jewish kingdom in the 5th century. You know the Jewish Yemenite? The girls are beautiful, no? Handsome, no? Especially the hairs. How we call it? Curly hairs. It's very nice. I like it very much personally. The curls of my student from the Yemenite origin. But this curl didn't come from the wind of the Red Sea. You understand? The third kingdom was in North Africa, but Judaism became very, very popular in North Africa. It started with the Phoenician, it's continued with the Berber. And we, the Jew, was the last fighter against the invasion of the Arabs of North Africa. Who is new? Us, the Jew. It was a queen, a very important queen. The name of this queen was Da'iyya el-Kaina. She was the head of this military force that tried to resist in the name of Judaism against the Arabs that came to North Africa. Most of the Jews that came from North Africa are the Berbers. They don't like the idea. Not only this, I think that the invasion of Spain in 711, the invasion of Spain was made by a Jewish barbarian with Muslim barbarian, and this is the reason that so many Jews started, Jewish communities started to develop in Spain in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th centuries. From the beginning, it was a Jewish Muslim force that invaded Spain in the beginning of the 8th century. The last chapter to discover from where Jews came is the case of Khazaria. 80% of the Jews in the beginning of the 20th century came from East Europe. Okay? More or less, 80%. How come? Why in this area there were so many Jews in the beginning of the 20th century? How come? The Zionist historiography tried to tell us that, you know, the Romans took the Jew from Judah, put them in Roma, they went up to Germany, they make a turn and to arrive to Poland. More or less, this is the story. And I asked myself, how come that there are so many Jews in Poland, Ukraine, and Russia? The only explanation can be the Khazaria case. I am speaking about a very, very important kingdom that started more or less to be Jew in the 80th century. The 80th century. 8th. Okay, sorry, I started to be tired. 8th century after Jesus Christ, this very, very large kingdom became Jew. What is the meaning of Jew? That a lot of people become Jew under the rule of the Khazarian.
Where was it?
It was between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. You say Caspian Sea?
Yeah.
Today, but it was the name of this sea was Khazarian Sea. In the Middle Ages, the name was Khazarian, after us. By the way, sometimes I'm joking with my student and tell them, Jerusalem, you know, after the Bible, you will agree with me, was not built by Jews. You know. By whom? By the Yevusi. Jewish, not Jews, the children of Israel invaded Jerusalem. It was not built by Jews. But maybe it's us, the Jew of the Europe, the Eastern Europe, that built Kiev. Kiev started to become a city under the rule of the Khazarian. Then if we didn't build Jerusalem, at least we have Kiev. Think about it, it's fantastic. I don't give proportion to try to unify Kiev with Israel. It will make the conflict much more complicated. But it's us that established Kiev. Till now, they have a gate, Khazarian gate, they have a quarter, a Jewish quarter in Kiev. By the way, the Soviet didn't like the idea that we build Kiev. Now, you know, till more or less the 60s of the last century, most of the Zionist historians accept the thesis that this massive presence of Jew in the Europe, Eastern Europe, came from the Khazarian areas. They only put forward also that it was Jewish from Eretz Israel that arrived to Khazaria. You understand? My last chapter, because I passed the time that you gave me, the last chapter, I'm leaving the, how we say, the long time of history and try to concentrate about Zionism, political Zionism, modern times, and also I try to analyze the character of the Israeli state. I make it clear. Jewish nationalism, I mean Zionism, was born in the areas that German nationalism was born, Polish nationalism was born, and they kept like the German nationalism till the 20th century, like the Polish nationalism till the 20th century.
About when?
More or less the second part of the 19th century.
Zionism was born in the second part of the 19th century.
Yeah. I'm speaking about not the movement. For the movement, we have a date. But for the birth of ideas, of Zionist ideas, you have not one date. You understand me? But if you want, from the 70s of the 19th century, we can feel the movement, the birth of a historiography, a national historiography, and national ideas about a Jewish state. This kind of nationalism, I mean Jewish nationalism, I mean Zionism, has a lot of common with German, Polish, Ukrainian nationalism. A lot of common. Because being a true German, being a true Polish, no Polish. Paul. Being a real Pole, you have to have parents, Pole parents, German parents. You need to be from the Teutons. Teuton. No? You have to be a Teutons, a real Teutons. You cannot become a German like you become American, like you can become a Frenchman. You have to born to be. Jewish nationalism has this characteristic that you cannot become a Jew, nationality. You have to be born by a Jewish mother or to convert, even if you don't believe in God. True or not? There are a lot of people that are converted here in New York without believing in God. It hurt me, by the way.
That's what defines being a Jew.
Sorry?
That's what defines being a Jew.
It's fine?
That's what defines.
Yes. Yes, it helped me. It helped me as a historian that has a lot of respect to Jewish religion. Now, Israeli state started in 47, 48. The basic of this state is not a republican principle. And I stress in my book that from 48 till 2009, Israel is not a democracy. You agreed with me, not?
Yeah.
Israel is a democracy? Yes, wonderful. Wonderful. Why Israel is a democracy? You know, democracy has a lot of definition. But you will agree with me that the first principle of a democracy is that the state belongs to its citizens. The first, before saying it's political pluralism, it's liberal, less liberal, the basic of democracy in modern times is that the state belongs to its citizens.
Yes.
True or not? Not true.
No, the basis of democracy is majority rule. Yes.
No.
Voting.
No, you make a mistake.
No, it's a flawed democracy.
Sorry. Before speaking, it's very important to understand from Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It was the first one. They put the principle of sovereignty of people, the first one, passing the French Revolution, arriving to your constitution. The basic of democracy is that the state belongs to its citizens.
The bankers.
I'm speaking about theory. Now, it's another discussion. Israel, from the beginning, defined itself as a Jewish state. A state that belongs to the Jewish people. Right or not? It means that this state belongs to Madoff, Joe Lieberman, and you, I presume, more than Arab students that working with me in Tel Aviv University. And they are Israeli citizens. I mean, people here in the room. The state of Israel, after a few laws in Israel, belong to them more to a quarter of the population in Israel that is not Jew. Israel doesn't define itself as the state of the Israeli citizens. True or not true? They give the right of election to everybody, but you know, it's like Dystopian Carton saying you will never win in poker. You know the rule, the game. Now, what I'm insisting is Israel is not a democracy because Israel says that is a state of the Jewish people. Automatically, if you went to Israel, you can become, in a few minutes, an Israeli citizen.
If you're Jew, a Jew.
I spoke to my friend here sitting. Okay, I imagine that he is a Jew. No, I make a mistake. Okay, sorry. No, I think that we understand each other. No, you understand why Israel is not a democracy? It's clear, simple. Everybody is speaking about Israel a democracy.
It's not a liberal democracy.
No, it's a liberal country, my friend. The fact that I can be... One moment.
It's a flawed democracy.
No.
Yes, it is. Please wait.
Israel is a very liberal country, a very liberal state, in the fact that I am a professor on the Tel Aviv University, till now. No, it's very important. There is a political pluralism very deep in Israel. It is a liberal ethnocracy. It is a liberal ethnocracy. It isn't a liberal democracy. Every citizen in modern democracy has to know that the state belongs to him. That the good of the state is a good for him. In Israel, the good of the state is for the Jewish people. The good of the state is for you, and not for the student, Arab student that I have in Tel Aviv University. A long time, it was okay. They supported it. They were afraid because of the Nakba. You know what is the Nakba? The Palestinian tragedy of 48. They were afraid because the military regime till 66 that were opposed on them in the 1950. But today there is a generation of young Palestino-Israelis that stop to be afraid. Every step that they become more Israelis in their culture, in their language, they become more anti-Israelis in their politics. You understand it? They stop to support living in a state that pretend not to be their state when they were born here, when I wasn't born there, and you are not born there. It will be finished badly, I think. Gaza is nothing what can happen in Galilee. In the Galilee, you know, the part that looks like Provence in Israel. They are a majority in Galilee, the Arabs, Israelis. If tomorrow they decide to build their estate, by the way, my students start to speak about it. This is a Jewish state, it's your state. Okay, we'll go to build in Galilee a state of Arabs, but not of Arabs, a real state of their citizens. By the way, they proposed me to be the vice president. They say that they are not racist at all. I don't know if to believe them or not. But they are going, thinking to make a Kosovo. You know why Kosovo happened? Because the Serbia regime started to be an ethnic regime, more and more. In the Kosovar, they are not really Kosovar, they are Albanian, you know. Albanian. But they don't want to belong to Albania. Most of my students don't, especially the female students, don't want to be a part of Ismail Haniyeh regime. You understand? They will build in Galilee a state of their citizens. They are right from democratically point of view. This will start to be the end of Israel. Because Israel will not let Galilee become a state of its citizens. You understand? It will be a mass murder. I'm afraid. It will be the end of Israel. A lot of Israelis feel today deeply the danger. This is the reason that Avigdor Lieberman got so many votes. You know who is Avigdor Lieberman? We can call him Yvette Lieberman. A very nice guy. that was we say in French, videur de discothèque autrefois. How we say it in English? Videur de discothèque. You know, the guy that throwing away from the discotheque, from the... How?
Bouncer. A bouncer.
No, he was working as a bouncer. Now he want to bound out the Arabs from Israel, no? Because he is right. In his diagnostic, he is right. The Israelis are more afraid in their daily life from this phenomenon than from the Iran nuclear. Believe me. Now, Bertel asked me, I was afraid to come into it. One of the answers to my thesis in this book, that the Jewish people doesn't exist, it's very important to know, one of the answers is in the biological level. You know that my university, there is laboratory that are looking for a Jewish DNA. You heard about it? They found it, yes. You can open the internet. They found it.
I read it from a journal, genetic research.
Yeah, they found it, a Jewish DNA. In my book, I try to deal with the question. In 2000 years, they found that the Jewish in the world are very, very close to the Palestinians. You heard about it? 1 year later, the same group said that it's not true. It's not the Palestinian, our brother. It was before the Intifada, by the way. They discovered that the Jewish and the Palestinians are very, very close from the DNA point of view before the second Intifada, in the 90s when it was a peace. With the Intifada, the same group changed the conclusion, the biological conclusion, and said that Jewish are not close to Palestinian, they are close to the Kurd. A nice family. No, really. I'm not against it. It's a bluff. I cannot come to details because I want to know what is most important for you that I will continue. But one thing important is, in the internet, if you are looking, you will see that they call me the denier of the Jewish people. You know, it's very chic, a denier. It reminds you of something. There are denier of the Shoah, and suddenly came a guy that is denier of the Jewish people. It's very nice. But it's true. Not that I deny the Shoah, not at all. I am an enemy of the deniers of the Shoah. But it's true that I deny not Jewish identity, not Jewish solidarity, not Jewish religion. I deny the Jewish people. Why? Because Zionism denied the existence of the Israeli people. Zionism, the Zionist colonization in Palestine, create two people. The Palestinian people and the Israeli people. I'm not always proud to the fact that I belong to the Israeli people, especially lately with the Gaza war. But Zionism succeeded to create a people, a nation there, a Palestinian one and an Israeli one. There is a language, there is a theater, there is a cinema, there is a literature, there is even a food, the hummus. But Zionism doesn't want to recognize the fact that they build a new nation. They treat these people, this nation, as a bastard, inglorious bastard. If I'm a denial of the Jewish people, Zionism is denial of the Israeli people and put in danger the existence of the Israeli state. Thank you.
Sorry, let me call on people and don't talk until I call on you. And please try to do your questions or comments short. Yes.
I wonder who has the option on the book to over, or how is it going to be translated into multimedia with the attention that it's received?
It's going to be.
Are they coming at you now with big contracts? They're negotiating the option for the movie.
They come with contracts, not big contracts.
Not big.
Not big yet. You know, but there is two groups of filmmakers that ask me to try to make a film of a TV series with this subject. I prefer a TV series, you know, with every chapter has
You
a...
should insist on being...
It's not a, it's two groups now that try. I don't know who is the serious one. Okay.
Yes. Me? No, the woman.
Just speak up so they can hear you back. Louder, please. Could you stand up? I think that was...
Thank you very much for your great talk, and I'm very interested in the book. One thing is about the democracy of Israel. I think that Jim can so that's an easy answer to your question about the Israeli democracy. And the second question, I was wondering what is your opinion about the boycotting Israel, and especially the government of Israel?
First of all, could you repeat that?
Yeah.
The question was your...
The person asked, didn't ask, that apartheid regime cannot be a democracy, first of all, and what is my position in face of the boycott of Israel, especially of the University on Israel. Now, you notice that in this conference, I didn't mention the occupied territories. I spoke about the characteristic of the Israeli state in the 67 borders. I didn't come in because the question of the occupied territories in Israel has intellectual issue finished. You understand me? It's finished. There is not real discussion, intellectual discussion. It's political and military. Israel will continue for a time to kill, to oppress people in the occupied territories. After 42 years that they don't have any right, political right, civil right, and other rights. This you know. Okay, one moment. I didn't come into the issue because I think it's not, it's very important from human point of view, political point of view, not from historical point of view. You understand me? 42 years, they hold the people without any rights. It's not the same attitude to the Israeli Arabs, the Palestinian Israelis. If you meant apartheid, the politics in the occupied territories, I agree. But you see, Israel is saying that he is not annexing juridically these areas. They are occupied force in these areas. Right or not? Like the Americans in Iraq or in Afghanistan. With the colonies, but juridically, like you in Afghanistan. No? You in Afghanistan. No? Now, I want to know, okay, about Iraq, you are saying that you are going away very soon, no? I hope. But not about Afghanistan. In this week, you send 13,000 more soldiers to Afghanistan. You are not calling United States an apartheid regime if they will be there even 50 years. There is apartheid, a clear apartheid in the occupied territories. The colonies has anything to do with the other population around. They have special roads, special houses, you understand? Completely separate from the population. They see the population when they come to build the houses. I agree that this is apartheid occupation. I agree also that there is a segregation in Israel. You know that we cannot marry non-Jew in Israel. You know it? One moment. You don't know?
I can't marry a man here, so yeah, same thing.
Wow, the same thing. I agree with you. We have to fight that you can marry the man. Do you want to join me to fight against the laws in Israel that don't let people from other communities to marry between them. You can imagine a democracy that you cannot marry the non-Jew? And by the way, it's not because of the religious, because of the Orthodox. It's one of the mistakes that a lot of people are doing. The decision to give the rabbis the right to marry people was taken in 1947 when the majority was of secular people, but not sure about their identity. They needed the criteria of the religious criteria to define who is a Jew, who is a not Jew. Then is a segregation in Israel itself, not apartheid, and you cannot compare it to the apartheid. I mean, speaking about the Israeli state. When I finished the question, you want to stop me with the most difficult question of boycott? Okay, stop me. Where will go? Stop me, it's better, I don't, you see.
I just would like to point out there's lots of hands up so you can make your answers a bit short.
Okay, I should be short. You see, I'm not for boycott of Israel. Don't thank me. Fight against the racism in Israel. Don't thank me, mister. Now, one moment. I'm not for a boycott of universities. This is your question, because it will be a little bit paradoxal that a university that pay me to speak, even in New York, that I will boycott it. What is my opinion about pressure against Israel to go out from all the occupied territories? I accept everything. You understand? Any means to make pressure on Israel to go out from the occupied territories is legitimate in my eyes. Not killing children and women, but I'm speaking any other pressure is legitimate in my eyes. To force Israel to go out from all occupied territories. Okay. I will stop with it. He asked me to be shorter. Forward.
Excuse me. Here, you had a question? No, sir. Yes.
I have two questions. First of all, what, you mentioned the Palestinian students who are hoping for a democracy in Galilee. Why is it that they are not hoping for democracy in all of the Palestinian territory, Israel plus the occupied territories? Why would they not call for a democratic state of all the people of the territory, including those who were exiled in the past who have the right to return? Right?
Because they are clever guys. It's a difference between proposing to Israel to become a non-racist state or to propose the Jewish Israelis to become from a day to tomorrow a minority in their state. You understand it? Now, you wanted to ask what is my opinion to the one-state solution. This is the question?
I could ask that too, yes.
No, you asked this. You asked exactly this. But you are very clever and very nice guy. You didn't put the question to me. No, you see, I think that the one-state solution, this talkie in New York, ethically, is very good. I hope to live in one state with the Arabs. Politically, I think it's not clever to put it forward as a political program today. A lot of students of mine understand it. Other ones are for the one-state solution. I think that we have to concentrate all our force to troops from the occupied territories and to build two states for two societies. But the day that we arrive to throw out the Israelis from the occupied territories, it has to be the day to start a fight to create a confederation between an Israeli state and a Palestinian state, because we cannot live without Palestinians in the Middle East. And if a Jew don't want to live with Arabs in the Middle East, I give him the choice to come to New York. I know, this is the reason that I say New York.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think about Israel Shahak's work, Jewish History, Jewish Religion, because in it he makes the argument that it's the logic of the religion to exclude others and to develop this sort of idea that the logic of the religion is the logic of Zionism, and that it's an exclusive one. And to follow that line, you haven't talked very much about the way that the Israeli state and Israeli culture is about the annihilation of diasporic cultures, the assault on Yemeni identity, the assault on Sephardic identities, and the
I understood the question.
Yeah.
Be short, huh? Very short. I don't accept the theory of Israel Shahak, a great moral person that died. But he was a physician, no, a chemist. Chemist, oh, chemie. Chemist, sorry. He was a chemist, not a historian. I agree one thing, that Zionism took from Jewish religion the worst part of isolation. But the Jewish religion, it's a lot of other things. You understand me? And I have another attitude to Jewish religion and to Zionism. Zionism is not a Jewish religion. By the way, it's a contradiction to the Jewish religion. At all, with a lot of this. I think that Shahak was a very nice person, but a bad historian. Other questions?
Okay, here, stand in the middle. I want to ask you about linguistic analysis.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that if the Khazars were the main element of the Eastern European Ashkenazi population, then what we call Yiddish would be based on their language, their Turkic language, as opposed to what linguists understand came from Western French and Eastern German dialects in the Middle Ages, which, with the people moving east, became Yiddish.
Yeah. You had my book? Not yet. No. Not yet. Because I answer in the book about this question. We can make it shorter? No, I will answer very, because it's a very complicated question. The Yiddish has nothing to do with the Western Jewish German language. Nothing to do. A part of the Yiddish is based on the Eastern German. In East Germany, they were not Jews. The question is why they are speaking Yiddish is very complicated. There is a few explanations. In my book, I base myself on the works of Paul Wechsler. You can even this evening to go to the library to read his books. The Yiddish language is based on the Eastern German language. You see, not on the Jewish German of the Western, between Strasbourg and Metz, Köln and all this area. You understand me? There is not any evidence that it was emigration from west to east. In the final thing about all this question is, how come? I'm sure that in some stage of development, the guys from the east asked rabbis from Germany to come to help them, because Germany was higher level culturally. You understand me? In the book, I'm sorry that I cannot make it too long. In my book, I try to explain this question, basing myself about the works of a few linguists, and also of a few evidence. I don't know if somebody knows the name of Ribal, R-E-B-L. You heard about it? He's one of the first very important Jew in Russia that, was a very, very enlightened intellectual. He said in Russia in the 17th century, people didn't speak Yiddish exactly. Now, about changing, in the 17th century, he said, yes, he said that in 17, most of them didn't speak in Russia Yiddish. Now, one thing is important. You know the population can change in 1 or 2 generations a language? You know it? Yeah. You are the proof.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question. Buy the book. You want it, I will buy for you because it's a very good question. No, really. Okay. Yeah, there is word. Like the most important word in the Jewish religion is what is the most important? Davening. Davening. You know a little bit Yiddish? You know what is davening? The redst Yiddish? A bissl. Davening is to pray. It's a Turkish basic word.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
I, like you, hope in my lifetime happen because I think I'm older than you.
No.
What happens in your life. But in your confederation, which it seems to me is
Can you stand up, sorry, excuse me, so they can hear you better in the back?
it seems to me that in your solution of the confederation, right, that's the only solution now, but will still be a Jewish state because you can't have a democracy, American style.
No.
If it's a religious state.
A Jewish state cannot be confederate with the Palestinian state. An Israeli state, a state of the Israeli citizens, can be confederate. Today I'm fighting against the principle of Jewish state because I am sure that it will destroy the Israeli state. You have to understand it. Then I repeat and I say the confederation will be between an Israeli state, a Palestinian state, and I think also a Jordan state because most of the citizens in Jordan, the subjects in Jordan are Palestinian.
So
a very nice large state, no? Confederation, sorry.
So Israel will be Jewish and Jordan and Palestine will be Islam?
What does it mean Jewish? I am a Jewish? My culture is Jewish? It's another discussion. What is the meaning of Jewish culture? What is the meaning? Really the meaning? You understand me?
I know a lot of people in the world don't like
we have a Jewish secular culture in the world that unified the Jew? We have it? You understand that you cannot speak about a Jewish culture from secular point of view.
Without addressing anti-Semitism, which you haven't.
What? Sorry, I didn't.
Anti-Semitism. The latent variable.
I didn't understand. Slowly. You see, it's.
Stand up and state your question.
Okay. Well, two questions.
One. Stand up so you hear better.
One, just in general, I'm wondering why you chose to hold this forum at a time where more observant Jews couldn't necessarily come to contribute to the discussion.
That was my. Most of our meetings are on Friday. This is just.
Okay, that's fine. But I wonder why most of them are on Friday and what that implicitly is doing to who's being able to come and speak. Two.
Well, one moment. This.
That's my decision, and it's the way Marxists prepare for the weekend.
I guess Marx wasn't a very religious Jew, is what you're getting at. Two.
4 o'clock is not
how do you feel this discussion adds to continuing discussions of the reduction of racism, anti-Semitism, and addressing issues such as Jewish self-hatred, which has been addressed by multiple authors? My most interesting read thus far is by Sander Gilman.
What is the question, by the way? What you asked me?
I'm asking, how do you think this discussion is impacting the way people view discussions about surrounding racism, anti-Semitism, and the resolution of these problems?
Okay. With the things that you heard this evening, by the way, yesterday it was meeting also on the book. It didn't come. The Brecht Forum organized the evening. It wasn't Friday yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a lot of people come who were observant?
Yesterday? No, because he didn't come. Now,
I'm obviously observing because I'm here right now.
I want to know if it's clear that I'm an anti-racist, anti-Semitic. I try to prove in the book the Jew were in North Africa before the Arabs. Yeah. I try to prove in my book the Jew were in France before the Frank invasion. I try to prove in my book, and this is the reason that it's going to be translated to Russian, that the Jew were in Kiev, in Ukraine, before the Russian. I'm anti-Semitic? No. Now, I am not also a self-hated Jew. You know why? Look at me. You think that I have... Have a hate against myself? Not at all. You have to know me a little bit better to understand it.
It's your people.
Which people? The Israeli people?
Jewish people, the culture.
But it doesn't exist. How I can hate something that doesn't exist?
So welcome. I am black and I welcome you in by the way, I think you should unmarried. You should marry whoever you love. Now, I think a question. Where did the Jewish in Northern Africa come from? Was they born there? Or did they come from somewhere else? My second question is your book being sold in Israel? And my third question is, do you fear for your life?
My life? I am worried in New York. No, it's not. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Really, I'm not joking.
The other part.
Now, the other parts, I want to say that the Jewish in North Africa, it's a product of mass conversion, very, very early conversion I'm speaking about in my book. You see, it amazed me that a lot of Jews in Israel are sure that they are the direct descendant of David the king. Only the Ethiopian, the Ethiopian, they look at them, there is a kind of racism against the black Jew, because they know that it's not possible that they are descendant of David the king, you understand? Jewish in Ethiopia are a product of conversion, exactly like in Poland. The Polish, the Ashkenaz, become very, very angry at me. This is about the question. The Jew, most of the Jew, are a product of conversion, mass conversion, and I come to this in details in this in my book. It's very difficult to discuss against me, develop a discussion against me about these points in my book.
Unless you look at genetic history.
Excuse me, sorry. What was your second question?
I will leave you, a religious person, the biologically. I will leave you biologic explanation, legitimation of Jewishness. I think that it's a shame for a Jew that was born in the 20th century. We are all born in the 20th century. It's a shame for a Jew that was born in the 20th century to base his identity on biologic. Now,
Which is obviously what I'm doing.
Sorry, excuse me. So what was your second question?
Why don't you agree with him?
Sorry, lady.
sorry? It was very well. I mean, Zionist historians become very, very angry. They don't speak with me. But the media received it very, very well. And I was in the list of the bestseller for 19 weeks. You see, it's not bad for a very difficult, boring book like my book. No, really. It's not it's not a thriller. And also in France, it was sold very, very good, you see? Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm wondering why you say that the Jewish state, as it's presently constituted, is for destruction. A state doesn't go by justice, it goes by power. People like Lieberman have the power, and they're gaining more and more power, as it seems to me. We can't predict the future, but why can't they simply eradicate?
I will tell you. You see, to predict the past. But from time to time, no, I make an effort to predict the past. You see, all this book is imagination, you see. Now, the question, I'm not a prophet. But I know the stability of the state that is based on ethnic principle is a very weak state. The contradiction become more and more strong. I see it before me with the young Arabs in Israel. You understand me? Gaza, Jenin, is nothing what can happen with the Arab Israelis when they will decide not to accept the Jewish state. Now, why I'm sure about it, not only because of Kosovo, because I think something miraculous happened in the modern times. People are thinking that the state belongs to them, even if it always not belongs to them. But to give the illusion that the state belongs to you, it's a principle of modernity, political modernity. The principle that the people are equal before the politics, before the sovereignty, it's a principle of modern politics. Yes or not? You understand me? You don't have this principle, you are condemned in the state, like other states in the 20th century that was ethnic state and not democratic state. I don't make analogy. I was thinking about Sri Lanka. Okay.
Any other questions? John, you stand up.
Many copies of the book. Thank you for coming. I stay up late at night and I watch the Charlie Rose show, so I'm saturated in Zionism up to here. You know? That's amazing.
With the blood or without it?
No, I can hardly breathe. I get so much Zionism. Right from the horse's mouth. Netanyahu, and then following Netanyahu, we have one member of the cabinet after another. So it's very thorough. And then a lot of American journalists and so forth who also back them up. And inside stories and so forth. What I'm wondering is, when are you going to be on the Charlie Rose show? It's on. It's public television that it's on. Public television, mind you. And as an American,
I don't know. Anyway, I have to tell you that the Israeli TV received me wonderfully. I was in 11 missions in the TV in Israel. Appeared, and most of the journalists were very, very curious about the book. Okay, then. How is it?
You on Charlie Rose.
No. I'm speaking a bad English. It's better now. Okay.
The rest of my question was this.
Yeah.
I'm an American, and that's how I approach this thing. And as an American, I see that really quite a lot of money goes from here. Well, credits, not money. Go from here, first of all, to Israel. Secondly, to Egypt.
For itself. Yes. Really. I can try to give a lecture about this, but it's too late. It's very interesting. I will not come into the question. I will say one thing maybe about this. The destiny of Israel, the destiny of the area, of the Middle East, depend a lot on you, Americans.
North Americans.
I will not put the question, I can't do save us from yourself, for ourselves, okay? Save us. I'm not joking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's too long to answer.
Yes, I'll read the book. Yes, Matt.
You said before that we are an American nation as opposed to the Jewish nation of Israel. The thing that binds us together as a nation is that we all watch the same television commercials. That's pretty much about it. What about the idea of zero nations? Stop, just get rid of the idea of nationalism altogether in the way we approach things. So we approach things as a human community and just stop. I don't really care whether Jews are a nation or not, or whether Americans are a nation, or French or Gauls are a nation. What's relevant? Who cares? We're trying to create something different in our lives, in this world, right?
Tell it to the Palestinians. The Palestinians, they don't have a state. People that have a state, their own state, have to fight to abolish states. But people that don't have state are obliged to fight for a state. You understand me? If you want really to know my opinion, I am a universalist. Being an Israeli is only the point of departure for me. My dream is a world without states, as you can imagine. I want a confederation, for example, of the Middle East. But you know, don't mix utopia with politics. It's very important. As I say and I insist, utopia has to direct politics, not to replace politics. It's too easy and too dangerous. Okay. He asked a question. No, there is others that...
Okay, I'll try to answer the question. I'm not sure what I want to ask you, but first of all, thank you very much. You've given a very nuanced presentation, and I appreciate that. And that's sort of tied to my question. When you talk about the invention of a nation state of a people, of a race, as a fiction, which I understand is, sometimes people hear that you're denying their existence, and we know that once it's invented, it's a reality. So how do you address those who don't hear your nuance and just insist on hearing that you're denying someone's experiential reality or something?
Make attention. I don't deny Jewish identity. I'm never fighting against identity of somebody. There is identity of the homosexuals. They are not a people. There is identity of beaten women, but they are not a people. Okay? We are composed with a lot of identities. Everybody. You understand? I'm not denying identities of people. I deny the pretension that the Jewish people exist because it's brought people to believe that they have land there. You understand me? I don't care about the word people. If you want, throw it away. With one condition. Deeply speaking about a Jewish people is speaking about a people that has a land in the Middle East that made of his real land is not here. This is the reason that he made what he made, maybe. No, you have to understand what I insist.
I understand what you're...
One moment. I will be interpreted like people, you know, you cannot dominate it. It's a kind of règle de jeu. I mean, you have to, I know that I will be interpreted. This is the reason that I insist the recognition of the Israeli people. This is the reason that I insist politically to recognize the Israeli state. Not the Jewish state, the Israeli state. And I finish, because I am very tired, with the one example. When I was in El-Quds, you know, the Palestinian invite me to a Palestinian university after I published the book. They like very much the book. You can imagine. Now, they invite me to a conference in El-Quds University. Seren Nusseibeh invite me. And I give the lecture, like more or less better than today, because it was in Hebrew. By the way, they insist that I will speak in Hebrew because all the professors were ex-prisoners. The student didn't understand, but the professor insists that I will speak in Hebrew because they were ex-prisoners that knew very well Hebrew. You understand me? After the lecture, they asked me, how, after this book, you can justify and demand us to recognize the Israeli state? And then I say that even a child that was born from a rape has the right to live. You understand me? 48 was a rape. But something happened in history. We have to correct, repair a lot of things. You understand me? The day after it, in the first Palestinian journal, the headline was, even a child that was born for a rape has the right to live. Thank you very much. You know, it's very interesting. The people started to decompose in some way in the beginning of the new millennium. But, you know, using the word American people, French people, Italian people, see? It's useful. What we are meaning by saying Italian people? We are speaking about a group of human beings that are speaking the same language, more or less, has the same way of life, more or less, are eating the same food, more or less, have the same music, more or less, etc., etc., etc. Practic a norm, culturally practic a norm, common to this society that we call Italian people. If it's true to use Italian people, French people, German people, American people, how can I use the word Jewish people? You understand me? Because, you see, if I have a cat and a dog, I cannot start to call the cat dog. You agree with me? Yes. Because if I would call the cat dog and the dog dog, I didn't know who to call. No, it's not so simple. You have to understand. Jewish people, it means what? They don't have a language common to all. They are not speaking the same language. You see, I'm from Jewish origin. I imagine that there are other people here from Jewish origin, not? Yeah. A lot of you. Yeah. Can I speak in Hebrew now? You know, I'm very good in Hebrew, really. At least, can I speak in Yiddish? Not at, no, okay. I have to speak your language, okay? English. It was an option once when I was young, you see? I believe that we can arrive to it. Why Jewish people? Not a language, not a food. We are not eating the same food, you see? By the way, in Israel we are eating hummus. You know what is hummus? Questions, a few things that bother me a lot as a historians of other fields. I have to explain you that I'm not a historian of the Jewish people because we have in the Tel Aviv University a special department of Jewish history. I belong to the department of general history that is occupying with all the goys, but not about the Jewish. I have not any right to direct somebody in thesis, to write scientific articles or book about Jewishness. Why? Because I don't belong to the Department of Jewish History. By the way, the Department of Jewish History, a little department with 12 students, I think, this year. We have 120. This department, all of the professors there are Zionist professors. It's very natural. By the way, it's all the universities in Israel has two departments separately, completely separate. Okay? Then it's not my subject, it's not my field, it's not my right to write about Jewish history. I decided to write it because, you see, I thought that Jewish history is something very, very interesting. Very interesting. In the way people write about it, I didn't like. But I don't hide that I decided to write this book also because I am Israeli citizen that living in Israel in the beginning of the 2000 years, in seeing around me a kind of, how we call it, images of the past. And I'm speaking now like as a citizen, images of the past that worried me a lot. For example, to explain it clearly, I believe that you know more or less, at least a part of you, that you are not a direct descendant of the Anglo-Saxon. You know it? Thank you to come here and be so interested about my book, but I want to excuse again all the mistakes that I'm going to do in English. Sorry, it's not my first language. And the second excuse is that I see a few people here that heard me yesterday, and I'm afraid that they will be boring to hear it again. I will try to change a lot of things, okay? That the people that were yesterday will not be too much tired with my explanation, description of the Jewish non-people. Now, As Bertel told you, I'm teaching history in the Tel Aviv University. Jewish history is not my field. It's a long time that I was working about the natives in France, for example, and also natives in Germany. In one day I decided to question the natives in Israel, I mean the Jewish in Israel. And this is the book, this is a product of my questioning the Jewish present in the history. Now, I wrote the book after I got the full professorship, because I was sure that if I will write it before it, there were not any chance to become a full professor. Not only in Tel Aviv, I believe also in NYU it wasn't sure that I could get. It's not a joke. Now, I wrote the book after I understood that nobody can touch me really in academic point of view. Now, it wasn't my field. Then at the beginning, I didn't know exactly what I'm going to do. There were a few. In France, for example, people know today, at the beginning of 2000 year, that they are not direct descendants of the Gauls. You see? But 100 years ago, most of the Americans believed that they are the direct descendant of the Anglo-Saxons that came here, you know, a long time ago. Now, this is very interesting, between Israelis, 95% or even more are sure that they are the direct descendant of the people of the Bible. But it's not only the Israelis. I think that the Jew, most of the Jews in the world, at least in the Western world, are sure also that they are the direct descendant of the old Hebrew. Even in this room, I believe, there are people that more or less think that they are, you know, the children, not of God, but of the Bible, no? I started to write the book because I have questions around the concept like what is a people, what is a nation, what is nationalism, what is a nation state, and other things. By the way, the first chapter I'm dealing with this concept. Then if somebody is starting to read the book, you can jump on this chapter. It's the most abstract, most difficult. And I didn't succeed in this chapter really to be simple as the rest of the book. Okay? Don't be afraid, this chapter is difficult. Jump on it, and then it becomes much more narrative. You see, it will take you forward. Now, starting with a simple thing, with a concept like people. Yes? It's not a scientific term. But what we mean usually when we say American people. Most of you belong to the American people? Yes, no? No, you come from Israel. No.
New York is American.
Okay. No, it's I went in London to a restaurant, an Israeli restaurant, and I see hummus, falafel, but it's not really Jewish. We steal it from the Palestinians like we stole the land. You know it. Now, not food, not language, maybe music. Yes, but the Doors music is not a Jewish music. I like the Doors, the Beatles. Unfortunately, it's not Jewish, okay? For the moment. Now, what will we mean, Jewish people? If it's not a secular culture common to the Jew, it's difficult to speak in modern terms about a people. Don't forget that before the modernity, the word people was applied to a lot of things, quite differently than they use today. All the Middle Ages, the word people was applied to religious group, like the Christian people. You heard about it? God's people in England. Very common to speak about God's people. The Englishmen were the God's people, you know? Peuple de Dieu for the French. I mean, the word people design religious group. In the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, has other connotation, but not the modern connotation. You understand me? then why Jewish people? There is other reason why to use the word Jewish people. This deep belief that the Jewish came from the same origin. They came from where? From Palestine, no? 2,000 years ago, the Romans expelled the Jewish from Palestine. And they started to wander in the world, create a diaspora, arriving to Moscow, making a U-turn, return to their land in Palestine, Israel. This is